Good afternoon, classmates. My name is Shegu Olofuyegu, and I'm just going to give you an example of a state-based test. So, as you know from the book, a state-based test is any kind of test that you would use, say you needed to validate a series of steps or a specific entry. In my example, we're going to validate a dollar input. So let's say I've created a bank app and you can withdraw a certain amount. You have to write down a specific input, and the input has to be in the right format in order for it to be validated and accepted. So the two test examples I have is $25.56 and 24.5. Let's start with this. So starting off at state one, our first input is a dollar sign. And so in state one, we move on to state two, just like we have in our chart. Our second input is 2, a digit. And so, since it is a digit, we can move back onto state 2 because this is a repeating cycle. After that, our third input is a 5, which is another digit. We repeat the cycle again. Our third input is a decimal point. And so now we have state 2, decimal point. We move on to state 3. At state 3, our fourth input is a digit, so we can move on to state 4. At state 4, our next input is another digit, so we can move on to state 5. And at state 5, the only valid entry is a blank, so a termination point, which is exactly what we have here. And therefore, we move on to state 6, which means our entry is valid and it can be accepted. Now, in our second example, 24.5, we start with a digit, so we move to state 2. After this digit, we have another digit, 4, so we repeat the cycle back to state 2. On our third input, we have a decimal place, so we jump from state 2 to 3. After our decimal place, our fourth input is a digit, so we move from state 3 to 4. And this is where things go wrong. The only valid entry would be for another digit. Unfortunately, there's nothing else. And so it reaches the anything else category and enters a failed state. So we moved all the way from state 1 to state 4, but because we did not have the second required decimal point, our valid is considered invalid. Our entry is considered invalid. So those are two examples of state-based testing. If you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to ask them in the thread below. Thank you very much for your time.